Before we get to questions, I wanted to bring up another. I mean, I'm really interested in the process too, because these stories, I mean, they took us just right there in people's homes, in the prison with them, hospitals. And one of the most unforgettable stories was about Brenda, a mother of three who was trying to flee Honduras with her three children, I think it was three, and endured a perilous, exploitative journey that ultimately seemed from the story ended in heartbreak. We often hear these stories as they've been, we've heard a lot of reporters sort of recreating these stories based on testimony from people who've made that trek. You actually followed her from Honduras, or I'm sorry, from Honduras to Guatemala to Mexico, or what can you tell us that, and how did that come about? And do you think, your being there changed the kind of story you were able to get out of it?
Yeah. So I was paired with an amazing photographer, Daniele Volpe, and he and I, we met in the Guatemalan capital city, and we drove to the border with Honduras. And we just staked out for a couple mornings, just, watching people go through. I remember catching up to a couple groups that, we talked to them. They were hiding, they were running, they were, trying to hide between trees, or, getting into cars that were waiting really fast, and we'd have conversations with them, and then they, couple, like 10 meters down the road, they would get caught. And so it was this failed attempt of, are we ever gonna meet a family who actually makes it into Mexico? And we got lucky. One morning, we saw a small group of people emerge from this like, I don't even remember exactly what it was, like a back door of a house close to trees, and it was just kind of very shrouded, and there was a van waiting, and so we saw them approach the van, give I think a $10 or $20 bill per person, and get in the van, and we just ran into the van. We picked her because she's a woman, and so if this journey is horrifying and incredibly dangerous for anyone, more so for a woman alone with her three small children. And so we told her, we're doing this story. We'd like to go with you as far as you go. Wherever you end up, we'd like to go with you.
And what was she fleeing, and where was she going?
So she was in Honduras, and one of her young sons had been approached by the local gang and asked to join. And by asked to join, it means you join or you're dead, or you leave the country. And so she had no choice. Single mother, she just didn't think about it twice. And I was taking a walk this morning, and I wanted to make sure I noted this, like, these journeys are horrifying, and we'll talk about the journey, but imagine how bad it must be at home to know how bad it's going to get on the road, how vulnerable you're going to be. You don't know if you're going to make it. You don't know if you don't make it, what's going to happen to your three kids somewhere they don't know. And even that is better than staying at home. So anyway, so she told us her story. I could already tell she was shell-shocked. They had been walking for a while. She didn't know where she was. She had very little money with her. And we told her, our being here will have an effect on your journey. We don't know what it's gonna be. If it's gonna save you from something bad, because whoever would have wanted to do something bad wouldn't want to do it in front of press, or it could be, could have a negative impact because someone wants to make an example out of you. And so this is something you need to know, and you need to make that call. And it took her hours, like
Can I pause for a second there? Because this is something I think we don't talk about a lot in journalism, the ethics of dealing with people who don't have a whole lot of, who are vulnerable and who don't have a lot of experience with media. So that specific, decision to tell her and to lay out the risks, was that something you and the photographer had talked about before? Did you and your editor going into it? Or do you just meet people and decide on the spot?
That's something that the photographer did, and it was a big lesson for me. And he just had that conversation with Brenda, like right off the bat. I honestly, at that point, hadn't thought, everything was moving so fast, and I had just this rush of, did we find the right person to tell the story? And I was just going through, all of those selfish.
Here's the source. Here's the story. It's within reach.
I'm gonna get the job done. And that was a big lesson from the photographer. We were sitting in the bus behind Brenda, and Daniele tapped her shoulder and said, listen, we got to have this conversation and you need to make up your mind, which I really loved, because it was a big ethical, lesson for me, but also because, I really like working with photographers, and I like it when we're a team, and I like what, yes, you take the initiative too. If I'm not doing something I should be doing, then you do it and teach me. And so that was just a really eye-opening moment.
Thank you for the candid response. I mean, and it's, yeah, I think we've all been, when you're reporting overseas for a long time or in these tense environments, it comes up a lot. And it's, I deal with even these days, talking to sort of ordinary Americans that haven't had a lot of experience with the media. And so I was interested in the ethics part. And so when you presented this risk to her, what was the response?
She said she wanted to think about it, and time is kind of a blur, so I don't know how long it took her, but I think it was a couple hours. It was a very long day and long night. And she said, okay, let's do it. And I told her, we're not going to be able to help you make decisions, because you're going to be making decisions the whole time. Like, do I get into that sketchy bus? Do I follow this sketchy person? Do I talk to that person? Do I get on that raft? It looks, pretty dangerous. I told her, we're going to be, flies on the wall. We want to be here with you and talk about, we'll talk about your feelings, but we can't help you make a decision. And so we got to another ethical quandary when we got to the border with Mexico. And she turned to us and she's like, do we spend the night or do we just float across the river tonight? And I wanted to tell her, like, get your bearings, like, go to a shelter. It's too late. You have 3 children. They're sleeping. It's not a very long journey on the river, but we couldn't say anything. And then she decided to cross. There were a lot of people and it was a very small raft and it was very frightening. But it was her decision. And, I often wonder, and then we made it across. It seemed like such a bad idea because it was the first smuggler who approached her. And Daniele and I, the photographer, we were like, fuck, we should tell her, talk to other smugglers. Like, this doesn't feel right. There's something that just I don't know. And he was.
And it becomes a security issue then for you and your reporting team. I mean,
that was secondary. We were just like, right. She's gonna get caught. And she did. And that was a horrible moment. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, Hannah. We crossed the river. And as soon as the first of us put a foot down in Mexico, all these lights came on in the dark. This must have been like 3 a.m. And it was the federal police and the National Guard. And first of all, it was very scary because we thought they were going to shoot. And so Daniel and I immediately said, there's press here. Everyone put their hands up. And then Brenda started begging, please let us go. Please act like you didn't see us. Like, there's no harm. We don't even want to stay here. We just want to get somewhere safe. And I'm always going to wonder if maybe the police would have let them go. Maybe if they had paid some money and they saw that we were there and that was no longer an option.
Wow. That's a hard thing to wrestle with. I saw in other parts of that story, though, where you clearly didn't intervene. And I thought about how hard that must be, too, because there was a part where, as I think from reading several of these kinds of accounts, it seemed, you pay the smuggler, but then along the way, you're nickeled and dimed and this and that, and something else comes up and you're giving away belongings and anything to make up, the difference. And then at some point, she has to give her cell phone.
Yeah,
to a smuggler. And I was thinking, I'm sure you had the money in your pocket to make up this difference, and we can't do that as journalists. And I wondered how that colored the story, if at all, or whether that stays with you, or it's something that you've talked with others about, thought about as you.
Therapist.
Yeah, there. Yeah. Well, good. That's good.
I don't know how much that colored the story. The reason why we held back is because we didn't want to color the story. And so photographer and I just kept looking at each other like, we are miserable, horrible people for not intervening right now. And we just felt like cockroaches, but we took a step back and let her do what she needed to do. I think she gave away her earrings and her cell phone. And she made a promise that she was going to call her brother and then give him more money. And you just see like how some people see women in the most vulnerable position ever, and they still are exploitative enough to want to do as much damage as possible and take what they don't even have. And so on the one hand, we wanted to intervene. On the other, I think we were both just shocked, even though this is what we've been doing for a decade or more. We were shocked that what went wrong, like for you to be able to behave in this way.